The knock came at 11:14 on a Tuesday night. Outside, a full October thunderstorm. The kind that makes you pull your curtains and be grateful for walls. Jake Lawson wasn't expecting anyone. He hadn't been expecting much of anything for 6 months. 6 months was how long it had been since he stood at the front of a church in the suit he bought 2 weeks before, waiting. And the woman he was waiting for had walked through those doors, looked at him across the aisle, and said she couldn't go through with it. She left the church. 6 weeks later, she married someone else. Jake had gone through the motions since then. Work, meals, sleep. The ordinary mechanics of a life that had lost its center and was still figuring out what came next. He opened the door. Standing in the rain, completely soaked, hair flat against her face, water running off her jacket, was Lily Mercer, 26 years old, his ex-fiance's younger sister. Someone he had known for 4 years as a warm presence in the background of someone else's story. She wasn't trembling. She wasn't crying. She looked at him with the steady expression of someone who has been rehearsing this moment for a very long time and has finally arrived. She said 6 words that opened a door to 4 years of a story he didn't know he'd been living inside. What she told him that night was going to change everything he thought he understood. About the letters, about the job, about the person who had quietly been watching out for him while the rest of the world moved on. Please like this video. Those likes genuinely matter so much for stories like this. Subscribe too, it's free. Drop a comment and tell me where in the world you're watching from. Now let me take you back. Jake Lawson was 32 years old and worked in architectural drafting. He was the kind of man who showed up early, stayed late, and did the work correctly the first time. Not because he needed recognition, because that was just how he operated. His colleagues trusted him. His clients came back. He moved through his professional life with the quiet steadiness of someone who had decided at some point that doing things right was more important than doing things loudly. His personal life had operated on the same principle. He had loved his ex-fiancée Megan in that same steady way, all the way in, no reservations, planning a future with the same care he brought to everything else he built. He had bought the house before the wedding. A small one, slightly underfurnished, with rooms that were still waiting for the decisions he and Megan were supposed to make together. After the church, those rooms kept waiting, and Jake kept showing up to work, to the house, to the ordinary days, and quietly wondering what he was supposed to do next with a life that had been organized around a future that no longer existed. Megan Mercer was 34 and had the particular quality of someone who always knew what she wanted, right up until something better appeared on the horizon. For 3 years, what she wanted was Jake. Then she met Warren at a conference. Warren was 40, polished, financially successful in the visible way that certain people make certain others reassess their choices. He had offered Megan a version of life she hadn't realized she was missing, or had been telling herself she wasn't missing. She had chosen it. She had not handled the choosing gently, standing at the altar and saying she couldn't go through with it in front of their families and friends was the specific kind of exit that leaves damage behind it, not just to the person left standing, but to the story everyone thought they knew. She married Warren 6 weeks later. The marriage lasted 14 months before the cracks appeared. Jake didn't know any of that yet. Lily Mercer was 26 and had spent 4 years being the younger sister. That had always been the category, Megan's sister, present at family dinners, warm and quiet and slightly peripheral in the way of people who pay more attention than they receive. She had met Jake at a family dinner 4 years ago. She had shaken his hand, sat across the table, and spent the entire evening watching the way he listened. Not the performance of listening, the real kind. The kind where someone's eyes stay with you and their questions follow from what you actually said rather than what they were waiting to say next. She had driven home that night with a feeling she recognized immediately and stored somewhere she couldn't easily reach. Because he was her sister's, and she was loyal to her sister. So she had kept that feeling exactly where she put it for 4 years. But loyalty, it turned out, was not the same as stillness. 3 years before the thunderstorm, Jake had lost his job, a restructuring at his previous firm, the kind that arrives on a Friday with no warning and leaves you sitting in your car in the parking lot trying to decide what to tell people. It had come at a bad time. They always do. Jake had managed it the way he managed everything, quietly, steadily, without asking for more support than he thought he deserved. He had not known that someone was watching. A month after the job loss, an envelope arrived at his home address, handwritten, no return address. Inside, a letter, 2 pages, specific and warm, written by someone who clearly knew what he was going through. The kinds of things people feel in those months but rarely articulate. What the loss actually costs, what the waiting actually feels like, what the right next thing might look like when it arrived. He had read it 3 times. He didn't know who sent it. Over the next 8 months, 7 more letters arrived, each one specific, each one arriving at approximately the moment he needed it most. When a rejection came, when the savings account dropped below a number that frightened him, when the apartment felt too small and the silence too loud. He had shown one letter to Megan. She had said it was probably someone from his old office. He had put them all in a box and kept them. He had kept them for 3 years without knowing who wrote them. Lily had written every single one. She had heard about the job loss through Megan, who had mentioned it at dinner in the matter-of-fact way of someone who had already moved past worrying about it. Lily had not moved past worrying about it. She had gone home that night and written the first letter because the alternative, doing nothing while someone she cared about was struggling, felt like a choice she couldn't make. She had not signed them. She had not expected anything from them. She had simply decided that someone should say the things that needed saying, and she had said them. The job referral was the second thing she had done that Jake didn't know about. 18 months into his job search, when the right position had not yet appeared and the wrong ones kept circulating, Lily had used a professional connection she had through a college friend to route Jake's name toward the firm that would eventually hire him. Not aggressively, not visibly, just a word in the right direction at the right moment. The kind of thing that can change everything and is never traced back to its origin. Jake had attributed the referral to a contact from his previous firm. He had thanked a man who had no idea what he was being thanked for. Lily had said nothing. She had just watched, from the distance that family dinners and holidays allowed, as things slowly got better for someone she had been quietly rooting for since the first night she shook his hand. That Tuesday night, standing in his living room with a towel and dry clothes and a mug of tea he had made without asking what she took in it, he had known, somehow, to make it the way her mother made it, which she later said she found inexplicable. Lily told him all of it, not in a speech, not with apology or performance. Just the facts, offered to him like something that had been sitting in a drawer for 4 years and needed to be returned to its owner. He didn't interrupt. He sat across from her and listened in the way she had first noticed him listen, all the way in, no reservations, and let the shape of the past 4 years rearrange itself around what she was telling him. By the time she finished, the rain had slowed. He sat with it for a long moment. Then he said, "Stay until the rain stops," and she did. Please like this video. Those likes are what keeps stories like this alive. Subscribe if you haven't. Drop a comment. Where in the world are you watching from? Now the part where everything gets complicated. 3 weeks after the rain, things between Jake and Lily had developed in the quiet, careful way of people who understand that what they're building is real and therefore deserves to be built correctly. They had seen each other twice. They had talked for hours both times, not about Megan, not about the past 4 years, but about the ordinary things that become significant when you're paying the right kind of attention to someone. What he was working on, what she was reading, the kind of small reciprocal revelation that builds into something structural. He had driven home both times thinking about the particular quality of her attention, the way she made him feel that what he was saying was worth saying. He had been thinking about that when Megan called. She called on a Thursday evening. She said Warren had not been what she believed he was, that the marriage had not held, that things had become clear in ways she had not been prepared for. She said she wanted to see Jake. She said she thought she had made a mistake. Jake listened to all of it. He was not unkind. He had never been unkind even when he had every reason to be. He told her he was in a different place now, that there was someone he was getting to know, that he was not available for the conversation she was proposing. She asked if it was Lily. He said it was. The silence on the phone lasted long enough to mean something. Then she said she understood. He ended the call. He sat for a moment. Then he called Lily and told her. She had already known Megan was going to call. Megan had called her first, asking her to step back. Lily had told her sister that the decision wasn't hers to make, and she had meant it in the specific way of someone who has spent 4 years making decisions that weren't hers to make and has finally arrived at the one that is. Megan came to the house on a Saturday, not to fight. She was not a person who fought. She was a person who assessed and decided, and she had come to assess. She stood in the living room and looked at the walls. Still needing paint, rooms still half finished. The house Jake had bought for the life they were supposed to build. They talked, not loudly, not for long. She asked about Lily. He told her honestly. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said something he hadn't expected. She said Lily had always been the better one of them at seeing people clearly. She said she thought, in some ways she hadn't understood before now, that she had always known this about her sister. She said she hoped he understood what he had. He said he was starting to. She left before he could say anything else. He watched her go with the specific feeling of something finally being over, not bitterly, not triumphantly, just over. Finished in the way that chapters finish when the next one is already starting. He picked up his phone. He called Lily. He said, "Let's finish painting the walls this weekend." They painted the walls on a Saturday. Lily arrived with coffee and a playlist she had put together, a mix with no obvious organizing principle, except that every song in it was something she genuinely liked, which he found entirely accurate to who she was. They spent 6 hours turning the half-finished rooms into something whole. They talked about ordinary things. They laughed about small things. At one point, she painted a stripe on the wrong wall by mistake and stared at it for a full 10 seconds before either of them said anything. And then they both said something at the same time, and neither of them could finish what they were saying for laughing. He watched her laugh and thought about the letters, about the job referral, about 4 years of someone quietly choosing to show up in his life without asking for anything in return. He thought about what it meant to be seen by someone who asked nothing for the seeing. He thought about the rooms they were painting, the ones that had been waiting for the right decisions. He thought, this is a right decision. He proposed the following autumn, not dramatically. In the kitchen, over dinner, she had helped him cook because she was the better cook and had eventually said so, which he found both accurate and charming. No elaborate setup, no hidden ring in food. He simply told her he wanted to ask her something. She said, okay, asked. She said yes. He produced the ring. She said she figured he had it somewhere. He said he was old-fashioned. She said she knew. She said it the way you say something about a person that is entirely right. The wedding was small. Both of them were people who preferred the right company over many company, and the guest list reflected this. Megan attended. Not because things were uncomplicated, they weren't, but because Lily had extended the invitation and meant it, and Megan had accepted it with the grace of someone who has arrived at a version of clarity that is not comfortable but is honest. She sat in the 4th row. She watched her younger sister marry the man who had stood at a different altar 6 years earlier. She felt something she had not anticipated, not bitterness, not regret exactly, but the specific, clarifying weight of understanding what choices produce, what each road leads to, what you cannot go back and undo. She stayed for dinner. She danced with their mother. She left before dessert, which felt exactly right. Jake and Lily danced to a song from the playlist she had made the Saturday they painted the walls. She had made the playlist 2 years before that Saturday. She had not known, when she made it, what it would eventually soundtrack. She had just made a playlist she liked. The rest, as she would later say, was interpretation. Lily Mercer spent 4 years in the background of someone else's story. She wrote letters she didn't sign. She made calls she didn't take credit for. She watched from the right distance and said the right things and asked for nothing. She showed up in the rain on a Tuesday night and said 6 words. And the man she said them to listened, the way he had always listened, and let the truth of 4 years rearrange around him until it made the only sense it could. There are people in the world who love you before you know you need them, who show up quietly, who do the small things that change everything, who wait, not passively, not bitterly, but with the patient certainty of someone who knows what's true and trusts that the truth will eventually find its moment. Lily was that kind of person, and Jake, in the end, was the kind of person who recognized it. Here is the question I want to leave you with. Lily spent 4 years saying nothing, 4 years of letters with no name, calls that pointed in the right direction without announcing themselves. Love kept entirely out of sight, out of loyalty to her sister. Some people will call that devotion. Some will call it self-sacrifice. Some might call it something else. What do you think? Was Lily right to wait that long in silence? Or did 4 years of not speaking cost them both something they could never fully get back? Drop your answer in the comments. I want the real one. And please tell me where you're watching from. Please like this video. Those likes are what lets this channel keep telling stories worth telling. Hit the button. Subscribe if you haven't. Free, always. Share this with someone who needs to hear it today. See you in the next one.